All right, KP, we ready, mate?
Sammy.
I'll tell you what, I've been waiting all day for this. How are we going, guys?
Are you good?
Get excited.
How's everyone?
Have some fun with beef and lamb today.
The post
Full of water, KP. Let's get that going, mate. Make sure you're hydrated. We've got a bit of work to do.
The post-lunch crowd, Sam.
Yeah, the post-lunch crowd. Well, I reckon they're going to get some real excitement out of here today, Kelly. And thank you for coming down and giving us a hand with this. To my right is Kelly Payne. He's our retail Meat Standards Australia butcher. And he's come all the way from Queensland to show how to break down a sheep meat carcass. But we're not going to talk about sheep meat. We're going to talk about all species that MLA service on menu and how we have success with it on menu, mate. You know, so without further ado, we've got a big carcass there, a Victorian carcass. We're in the home state, around 24 to 25 kilos. And we're going to take that down from the neck all the way down to the leg. And then to my left here, we've got these two big boards that we're going to place it and digest it, you know, as it comes off the carcass. And then we're going to relate that to the screenshot that you're looking up there, which is the PowerPoint that we'll cross to intermittently. And I'll show you some examples of how MLA have worked direct with food service to grow demand with Australian meat on menu. And I'm going to get real interactive. I'm going to come out there and walk the crowds and get immersive. So as you see, we start off with the neck, and then we've got the short forequarter, which is the shoulder, which is a cut. I used to work in a butcher shop back in the day. We used to use the shoulder KP,
yes,
forequarter chops, right?
Yep.
But why hasn't that changed on menu, right? What we're seeing now with food service is they're utilising that cut to really have a centrepiece at the middle of the table and celebrate the wonderful thing that Australian lamb is. And the Greeks have been doing it for ages, but everyone else has caught on to it. It's the slow roasting technique of that forequarter shoulder. And the wonderful thing it is, you know, as Kelly's taking it off the carcass there, it's gelatinous, it eats well, and at the end of the day, it's kind of like that set and forget cut that you can put in the oven and then crack on with other, what we call in kitchens, mise en place, basic preparation. So they've got these ovens these days called combi ovens, right? So what you do is you get a traditional cut like the lamb, onion, carrots, celery. That shoulder goes on, we score it, bit of rosemary, Malden sea salt or Olsen sea salt, Australian brand, into the oven at about 90 degrees for 10 hours, slam that door and get on with the rest of your work. How does that help food service? It helps them because that means there's less preparation that has to be done by the front of house staff, and they can focus on the accompaniments to make that lamb even better. And it's slow and gelatinous. When you cook things slow in an oven, you maximize the yield process, right? And what does that mean? If you cook it high at 180 to 200, the water extracts from that lamb shoulder and it shrinks. But if you're cooking it at a slower temperature, your yield maximization is up to 30% more. And what that means is that when you're a mining site and you're cooking 500 kilos for a lunchtime service for 2,000 people, 30% is money, right? So don't only think about the end dollar cost. What we're saying to food service is think about the efficiency dividends from that cook method to make sure that you've got a wonderful product that gives you time back in the day. So there's an efficiency dividend, there's dollars. And then secondly, yield maximization by cooking it slow in the combi oven. So if we can go to the slide, please, AV people, we'll talk about, and I'll click it straight after here with my little clicker. We'll talk about some dishes here that we've done that Nathan just talked about with the Melbourne Cricket Ground. So we've got there a lamb shoulder gyro. Who likes a late night gyro? So that's a lamb shoulder that was slow cooked in the MCG kitchens overnight and then regenerated in what we call a turbofan oven, and then topped with some beautiful salads, tzatziki and Spanish onion, and served a la minute to people at the footy, right? So gone are the days, you know, I want you to eat your meat pies and things like that. They're the traditional favourites, but the stadia consumer expects more these days. They expect to be entertained, and if they're going to pay good money and we're going to get red meat on the menu, we're going to make sure it's delicious. So a beautiful gyro there that highlights the wonderful product that we sell every day. And to your right, we've got what they call halal snack pack. I never knew what it was, right? I'm showing my age now, but my daughters knew what it was. So when you go out late night, you've had the nightclub, you get the hot chips, and you get this beautiful slow-cooked lamb, sriracha, mayonnaise, herbs straight over the top, and you've got a wonderful end product, KP. So I'll go to the next slide. We're not only talking lamb, we're talking beef. So I'll talk about the relationship we've got with P&O Australia, which is part of Carnival Australia, the big cruise liners, and their return to cruising after 2 years of absence in 2022. We had an oyster blade dish that we did there that they served in their waterfront restaurant. And we all know that the oyster blade, due to the MSA grading right cut for cook utilisation, has the eating quality of a Scotch fillet if cooked properly. So once again, we're giving them a more economical solution on menu. And then the flip side of it is that the consumer's getting something different, and we're keeping red meat front and centre. But it's not only about beef, KP, and I'll get back to you shortly, mate. I'm talking too much. It's about goat, our good friends at Goat. So Estia Aged Care, one of Australia's biggest aged care providers, are starting to look at the different demographics and cultures that are coming into their residential homes, right? And there's a lot of Italian and Greek people starting to enter these homes, and goat, arni as they call it in Greek, or katsiki they call it, right? And the Italians love a capretto goat, and then the Indians, and even modern Australians. So how do we introduce goat onto menu, which hasn't been, in past dates common, right? So we teamed up and we did some recipes with Estia Aged Care. We developed a recipe book for the staff that flowed all the way down to the residents, that the parents and family that come and visited their residents in those centres so they could try those products at home. And we're proud to say that MLA's helped them shift 1 tonne of goat through that establishment in a year. So, good on the goat producers. Go the goat, give goat a go. So, KP, you're taking the shoulder off. What are you doing now, champion?
Yeah, we're just working our way through the carcass, Sammy. What I love about lamb, ladies and gentlemen, it's just like beef, right? It's got big chunks up here, and it's got big chunks up here, and it's got this little stuff in the middle. And when we talk to consumers, what I love about all the consumer sensory we've done, some people have talked about it, Sammy talked about MSA before, that they've given us some incredible information around these big pieces of meat, right? So we already know that the loins and the racks go really well, but I want to explain to you as we move along, Sam, around how fantastic the shoulders are, how fantastic the legs are, some of the couple of cook combinations that consumers have given us through consumer blind sensory. I reckon we'll be able to throw some numbers at you, Sammy, as we go along.
So we've got our lovely lamb shoulders there, which eat beautifully well. We got the shank, right? So
Yeah,
that's the forequarter shank, and then there's the hindquarter shank. So let's talk a bit about the shank now. Back to the presentation, please, AV team. So as we go on, we go back to P&O. So let me just talk on P&O just a little bit more, right? So I like to call it taking the turf to the surf, right? Taking red meat to the ocean, right? So when the P&O Explorer returned from Italy after 2 years of absence, it docked in White Bay at Balmain, and MLA, including KP, were on board, all masked up. It was heavy COVID times then, and we worked on 14 new beef and lamb recipes to hit their restaurants. So what they've got is the food pantry, which is like a food court if you go into your Westfield, but a more bespoke upper class one. And they've got the waterfront restaurant and Dragon Lady. And one of the dishes you'll see there is the beef hammer. So that's in the waterfront restaurant, and those big pieces of meat that bring celebration to the table in theatre. We've used the forehammer, which is essentially the beef shank, or what you've used in the past is also bucco. We served that with some wonderful sides, some kumara fries there. And on the right, chef, Butcher Kelly, we had the braised lamb shank with the creamy polenta. Every time a P&O ship leaves our shore for 3 days, 2.5 tons of meat disappears, right? So we want to make sure it's 3 tons. So that's why we're out there every day. And Kelly and I have been fortunate enough to be out on sea, taking the turf to the surf in the rocky gullies, Kelly, doing butchery training down there. They've got their own in-house butchers, and then also looking at those opportunities. And we just don't go in expecting to know their business. We listen to them. We look at their staff capability. We look at the numbers they've got, and then and the equipment they've got on board, and then we reverse engineer solutions that are bespoke and that will succeed with them. Because if we just go in there and tell them what to do and we don't know their business, there's a good chance that those products won't continue to go on menus. So it's a very big part of listening to our customer and then reverse engineering bespoke solutions that grow demand for Australian red meat on menu. And then we've got Pegasus, and it's playing to a home crowd here, owned by the Victorian Racing Club. They've got 16 hotels across Australia. They said, Berkey, we want to put lamb on our menus across all our pubs to drive more foot traffic in the menu, on our menus and into our pubs. And I said, why not? So the lamb shank pie there is unbelievable, right? So what we do is we cook the lamb shank, or we pre-braise it. Then we put that in the paste in the case and encrust it and serve it with your crushed peas and your mash. Back in the oven, serve just before. And when you pull that shank out, the meat collapses and fills the pie. So it's really, there's a bit of theatre there, you know, and a bit of fun. And then on your right, we've got the biggest commercial caterer in Australia, Compass, over 600 sites. And they're looking at opportunities to make sure that they have smaller portions but better quality red meat products on menus. So we've got a lamb shank there that we did with an Israeli pearl couscous and a watermelon radish salad. So back to you, KP. What are you up to, mate?
All right, so we're not wasting anything if we see how we go for time, Sam. But we're just going to have a shoulder rack, right, which is the shoulder meat or the forequarter meat. So rather than wasting it, and we've got this one here, Sammy, if you can just point that out to everyone there. That's a beautiful neck fillet roast, right?
Beautiful, chef. Really good that you did that. And I'm a little bit ahead of Kelly, but I want to carry on because this is exciting. He'll get to me. You know, I'm too fast. I love to talk a bit like a race caller. But we're on to the rack, short loin and tenderloin. So that's the 8% of the carcass that we know always sells all the time. But a bit of fun here for Rare Medium Academy. The centre cut, which is the rack chef, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
straight
absolutely.
after you pull the shoulder off, which you're starting on now. What we're saying to chefs when they're doing plated functions, there's no need always to have a 3-point rack on. What I'm essentially saying is do a 2-point rack, okay? But then also do a pulled shoulder lamb croquette. So not only are we showcasing one cut, we're showcasing 2 cuts. What you're doing is you're offering a plate efficiency to the operator so lamb stays on the menu. You're also offering variety of the carcass, so you're offering a shoulder and a rack. And then you're offering an opportunity for the consumer to go away and try something else. Because what we know from our research is that trends start in food service and flow down to what the consumers are doing every day for their red meat meals. So, you know, there's an opportunity there, not just to celebrate the 3-point rack, but to also bring in shoulder or bring in neck fillet, if you like, into that product, or braised leg, if you like. And like I said, our role at MLA, we know that the centre cuts sell, the choice cuts sell, but our role is to extrude as much value out of that carcass as possible to return a better premium to our levy payers. Forward again. All right, and the same example here, right? The tenderloin, right? We know it's only 2% of the carcass, and it lies underneath the sirloin. But what we're finding in a lot of pubs is that they're only using that centre part, right? So if you count 3 back from the big head of that tenderloin, you'll see 3 or 4 cuts. What the pubs are using is they call centre cut of the tenderloin. My challenge to food service operators is let's use the whole tenderloin from the tail all the way to the end and make sure that we serve that as a centerpiece cut for the consumers. So much like we talked about the lamb shoulder, we talked about the fall hammer. Christmas time, why not celebrate with a whole tenderloin that's seasoned and barbecue over flames? Why not celebrate with a bone and rolled leg of lamb that we splay out on the charcoals? And the beautiful thing about a leg of lamb is that my dad, who likes the well done bits on the end, enjoys that at the end of at the beginning of the lamb cut, and then my daughters, who like medium rare, have the centerpiece. So everyone kind of gets fed, because as we know, when we cook a splayed butterfly lamb leg out, the end bits are more well done than the center bits. And then we go on to more the rack and the loin, which KP's taking off now, and I'll cut back to you in a second, KP. Nathan talked about our promotion with ALH Hotels, who's part of the Endeavour Group, Dan Murphy's, BWS. They also own 356 hotels around Australia. So what we did is we hit the road with ALH and nationally with their executive chefs, and we went back to basics. They hang their hat on their steaks. So it's important that every time they whack a steak on the grill, that they're going to have success with it. So a lot of times is when you go and eat a steak at a pub, and doesn't it frustrate you when 2 steaks come out and then you've got to wait 20 minutes more for the other steaks, and then you're being polite and your steak goes cold while the other steaks go out. So we're trying to eliminate that from happening. So what we're showing, if you're going to cook a tomahawk, it needs to go on 6 minutes earlier than a Scotch fillet, because that cooks a lot faster. So it's all about timing on the grill, so they all come off at the same degree of doneness, and the end consumer, if they're paying $50 for a steak, like Nathan said, is getting a wonderful experience, because we can't afford to stuff it up, right? If people are going to pay for it, we've got to make sure that they're doing a great job with it. And we've also done some great stuff with lamb with ALH, and I'll get to that in my presentation. Back to you, KP. What are you doing with the rack?
We've got the rack, so we're just French with just a cap on rack, Sammy. We're not going to do a denuded one today. So yeah, these just sell like hotcakes, right?
They sell like hotcakes. We call them lamb lollipops. And my challenge is the producer, let's produce some lamb with 15 racks, 15 cutlets, because we'll even sell more. But I don't know if we can do that. But anyway, KP, I love a lamb lollipop, and so do the kids. It's the ultimate enjoyment, a nice lamb cutlet over the barbecue. So, but as we talked about the rack there, it can be accompanied with other cuts as well.